Male reproductive system and female, as the main difference of their functionality is that male reproductive system produce the sperm, maintain the sperm, and introduce them into the female body. That's it. That's their job as far as the reproductive system is concerned. On the other hand, female reproductive system, they produce the egg, maintain the egg, receives the sperm, then the fertilization takes place in the body, and then they harbors the fetus and even nourishes the offspring. So female reproductive system has a lot more function than male reproductive system. Okay? And in both cases, female and the male reproductive system, there are other structures that are involved into it. Not only just the production, such as from the testes and the ovary, but also other structures involved in it. So we're going to focus first in the male reproductive system. Okay? So the gonads, they're a pair of testes which produce and secretes produce the sperm and also act as an endocrine gland. Okay? Systems of ducts, which is called reproductive tract. That means they can transport the sperm from one location to another location, which from the testes, it starts with like epididymis, ductus deferens, or vas deferens, ejaculatory ducts, and urethra. It's basically one pipeline, different section has different name, and some accessory sex glands or accessory glands that is involved in here, called a pair of seminal vesicles, meaning two seminal vesicles, one prostate, and two bulbourethral glands. That means total 5 glands right there. So a pair of seminal vesicle, a pair of bulbourethral glands, and a single prostate. Okay, then as far as the supporting structure is concerned, the scrotum is the house for the testes, so they can support the testes and penis, which deliver the sperm into the female reproductive tract. Okay, by the way, the urethra in this case of male reproductive system, it can function as a reproductive tract. It can also function as a urinary tract. That means it can deliver both. So, but in case of female reproductive tract, the urethra is separate. This is the structural representation. So that's the scrotum, that's sac. This is the testes. So the testes is where the sperm production takes place. Although we are going to learn that the tubule, that the tightly coiled tubule within the testes, which are known as seminiferous tubule, coming later on, that is where the sperm production takes place. So seminiferous tubules are tightly coiled tubule within the testes. That is where the sperm production takes place. Then this portion is called epididymis, the head of the epididymis. That's the tail of the epididymis. So the sperm goes up like this and then swim here, and then this pipeline continues, called ductus deferens or vas deferens, and then they go on top of the urinary bladder. That's the bladder. That's the urinary bladder. Top of the urinary bladder, and right here, slightly expanded, like slightly swelled, we can call it ampulla of ductus deferens, ampulla, like a slightly expanded area. And then to continue the pipeline called ejaculatory duct. Then this ejaculatory duct is going to merge into another pipeline started here from the urinary bladder called urethra. And so from here, this is the urethra go through the penis. So that's the whole reproductive tract. Again, testes, the epididymis, the head of the epididymis, the tail of the epididymis, ductus deferens or vas deferens, ampulla of the ductus deferens, ejaculatory duct, and urethra. Now, urethra, I have a slide later on, urethra can be divided into 3 regions. So when they're going through the prostate, this portion is called prostatic urethra. When they're going through this membrane structure, we call them membranous urethra. And finally, when they're going through the penis, we call them penile urethra or spongy urethra. So it's just urethra has three different names based on where they are traveling. Okay, so one more time, testes within a bag called sac called scrotum, head of the epididymis, the tail of the epididymis, the ductus deferens or vas deferens, ampulla of the ductus deferens, ejaculatory duct, the urethra, prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and penile urethra. Now, accessory glands, right here is a tubular structure. Look at another pipeline looking structure that is called seminal vesicle. We have one on this side, the other one will be the other side. So there are a pair of seminal vesicles which is connected directly to the ejaculatory duct. So all their secretion goes right there into that pipeline. This huge gland right there underneath the urinary bladder is called prostate. And there's a tiny pea-sized gland. Again, one on this side, the other will be on the other side, connected directly to the urethra. That's called bulbourethral gland or Cowper's gland. That's another name for bulbourethral gland. So the pair of seminal vesicle, they secrete here, the prostate secreting within the urethra right here, and then a bulbourethral gland, their secretion comes here together. So the whole thing, like the prostate and bulbourethral gland fluid together, it's called semen. So that's basically the structure of the reproductive system of male. Now, so how we are going to study? We're going to study the seminal vesicle, prostate, and bulbourethral gland, what they secrete, and what are their functions. We're going to study that. Then we're going to study a little bit about the structure of the testes and the scrotum, along with the structure of the penis, with all these like a muscular structure, or we call the erectile tissue structure, and that's it. Then once we finish that, then we'll go into the production of the sperm or spermatogenesis. This is the characteristics of this penis that we were reading, and just a couple of times if you read them, you can memorize this. It's not very difficult. pH is approximately, slightly alkaline pH. They want to maintain this alkalinity because the vaginal environment is more acidic most of the time, so they can neutralize the acidity of the vagina so that sperm can survive, because it could be hostile to the sperm. Typical ejaculate contain 2 to 5 ml of fluid, 60% of which is the next big chunk comes from prostate, and then sperm and the other secretion from bulbourethral glands contain 20 to 100 million spermatozoa. 20 to 100 million sperm per ml. Spermatozoa is a singular word. No, sorry, spermatozoa is a plural word. Spermatozoon is a singular word. So 20 to 100 million sperm per ml. So that's approximately the whole thing is called semen. This is what the seminal vesicle produce. So seminal vesicles, so if you look from the side, there are two of them. So this is the ductus deferens, continue here. So that's one seminal vesicle this side, the other seminal vesicle. It's a tubular structure. So their secretion comes directly into the pipeline, into the ejaculatory duct. They produce 60% of they're responsible for 60% of the semen volume. Slightly alkaline, and I already explained why it needs to be alkaline, because to act as like a buffer in the vaginal environment, which is slightly acidic. Seminal fluid contains fructose, prostaglandins, and fibrinogen-like proteins. What does that mean? So fructose is the sugar. So this is very unique. Whole body cells, like any other human body cells, like glucose as their primary resources as a sugar for production of the energy, but sperm like fructose. Okay. So seminal fluid that supply them that energy. Prostaglandins is actually smooth muscle activator. Prostaglandin act as a smooth muscle activator. So they basically constrict and produce a spasmic reactions on the smooth muscle of that reproductive tract, not only in the male body, but also in the female body, so that helps in the sperm movement. because remember, the sperm has only one function, that is to fertilize egg. And in order to fertilize egg, they need to travel. They need to travel from testis to epididymis, the ductus deferens, ejaculatory duct, urethra, to the vagina, and then from vagina to the cervix to uterus to the fallopian tube. So basically, it's a long way to go. In order to go from this, in order to have that long journey, they not only have to have a slim structure, which they would have, they travel light with not a lot of cytoplasm. We're going to talk about that at the end. They also require some energy molecules. Fructose is one of them. They supply the majority of the energy. They require tail, which helps them to movement, so that we will know from the structure of the sperm. And they also help from like prostaglandins, like substances, because basically they create a smooth muscle spasm so that the sperm can move. And finally, there is a fibrinogen-like protein. Fibrinogen, if you remember from the blood chapter, helps in the blood clotting. So we have a similar type of protein in this in the semen produced by seminal vesicle. What they do is to kind of like coagulate the secretion. So when the sperm comes out first, like when the sperm comes out, when the sperm ejaculate first in the vagina, they don't want to get into that hostile atmosphere right away. Because remember, in vaginal acidity serve as their immune system, meaning in the immune system, in the lymphatic system, we studied that there is a physical barrier. So stomach acid, vaginal acid, they act as a physical barrier. So it's a nature's way of protecting the vagina to make it slightly acidic, because acidity is the hostile environment for a lot of bacteria and other pathogens. At the same time, they're also hostile for sperm. So not only the secretion contains the alkaline buffer, which is more from the bulbourethral gland, they reduce the acidity and they make sure the sperm can survive. So they need some time. So what happens is when the sperm comes out, they comes out like a cage of protein. That's their job. And then slowly they liquefy, and then the sperm starts swimming properly in that female body. Okay. Next is the prostate gland. Prostate glands, another big chunk of the semen they produce, but they're slightly acidic. Prostatic fluid is slightly acidic. So what is that function is, because now let's go back to the male body only. So the urethra is not only delivered the sperm, but urethra is also responsible for delivering the urine from the urinary bladder. So that acidity helps maintaining the germ-free urethra, meaning there is no microbes can grow. So that helps in the protection of the urethra from any microbial infection. Not only that, prostate also releases a substance called seminal plasmin, which is an antibiotic. So they have a role to protect the urethra properly. Now that is why you will very rarely hear that the male is suffering from UTI. The urinary tract infection commonly affect a lot of female throughout the year, but they rarely affect the male. If they affect the male, 99% chance is something wrong with the prostate, because they secrete a natural antibiotic to keep that keep that urethra clean. Obviously, prostate releases a lot more than that, so they release a lot of other molecules which plays in activation and species specification from the sperm to the egg, which in undergraduate level you don't have to study anyway. Bulbourethral glands are known as Cowper's gland. They are tiny, pea-sized gland that directly attach a pipeline to the urethra. They produce a lot of thick and clear mucus, because not only they neutralize the acidity of the urethra and of the vagina, but also they are acting like a lubricants. because remember, if during the intercourse of the copulatory process, if the penis produce any inflammatory reaction, remember inflammation is the body's response to the injury, which is what body doesn't want. They do not want their immune system get activated against the sperm, or like male and female both. So both body's immune system can get to suppress that, to minimize, to suppress that, they get to minimize the injury. So in order to minimize the injury, they have to make the copulatory organs, such as penis, slightly slippery, and make it lubricate so that they cannot produce that kind of immune response. So that's basically the function of the bulbourethral glands. So these are the accessory structures. So accessory structure include 2 seminal vesicles, 1 prostate, 2 bulbourethral glands, total 5. They produce, they add the maximum amount of like 90% of the secretion known as semen, which contain the sperm. Now the structure of the scrotum, it's a bag, but it has a lot of function. Why? Because it houses the testes, and the testes originally formed near the kidney and during the fetal development, and slowly they descend into that bag. So from the inguinal canal, they slowly from the abdomen, they descend into the bag, and that is called like descent of testes. I think still a picture on that. No, I don't have. So that's called descent of testes. If the testis is hidden in the abdomen, we call cryptorchidism. So surgically it has to remove, because testes need to be in the scrotum in order to produce the sperm. Why? Because the sperm production requires 2 to 3 degree lower temperature than the body core temperature. That's needed for the sperm production. So if the body temperature is like 37.5, then it's like a 34, 35 degree is required for sperm production, a couple of degrees less than the body temperature. And so how they maintain it? So there are 2 muscles. One is called cremaster, another was called dartos muscle. So that's long muscle piece is called cremaster muscle. And the bottom one, that's called dartos muscles. These 2 muscles, they maintain the distance of the scrotum from the body. So if the body is too warm, the scrotum goes a little bit away from the body because of the interaction of those 2 muscles, and the body is cold, they will bring the testes closer to the body by, again, those 2 muscles, cremaster and dartos muscle. By maintaining the distance from the body, they can maintain the temperature of the testes, which is required to have 2 to 3 degree lower for the successful production of the sperm. Now, each testis, they produce a lot of lobes. Like each testis has a lot of lobes inside. So each testis, they are surrounded by 2 membranes called tunica vaginalis and tunica albuginea. So tunica vaginalis is the outside layer, tunica albuginea is the inside layer. So this structure is better. So tunica vaginalis is this gray layer, which is like 2 sides, so gray layer, and this white layer is tunica albuginea. Those are the 2 layers that protect the testes. Now this white layer, they protrude inside to divide the testes in multiple lobes, like multiple rooms. In each lobe, there are tightly coiled pipelines. Those tightly coiled pipelines are called seminiferous tubules, where the sperm production takes place. So seminiferous tubules is the house for production of the sperm. And these tubules then lead to a mesh, like a network of vessels. We call this reti, R-E-T, reti testis. Reti means network. That reti testis finally combine together to produce epididymis. This portion is called head of the epididymis, where they're combining, they're merging together, and finally become one line, pipeline, that's called tail of the epididymis. Then that line pipeline continue, we call that vas deferens or ductus deferens, and which will travel over the urinary bladder, which we already learned. But here, one extra thing here, when this ductus deferens is traveling right here above the testes, they also travel along with all the blood vessels. There is a network of vein, there are nerves, there are artery, all the blood vessels. So what body does, they together make a cable. So the ductus deferens, blood vessels, nerve, all together they make like a cable, like a huge, looks like a huge pipeline. They create a cable which contain all these individual pipes. That cable, I'm using the word cable, is called spermatic cord. The spermatic cord contain vas deferens, all the blood vessels and the nerve all together. So that is the structure of the testes in detail. Inside the testes, there are two cells. One is called interstitial cells or Leydig cells, and one is called Sertoli cells. So inside the testes, we have a pipeline called seminiferous tubule. Inside that tubule, we have these Sertoli cells. And outside the tubule, we have that interstitial cells or Leydig cells. Okay. Leydig cells or interstitial cells produce a very important hormone called testosterone, very important hormone for male body because they are responsible, along with some secondary characteristics, they're responsible for sperm maturation. So without them, sperm cannot be mature. And Sertoli cells, or if you follow the other names, testicular or nurse cells, their main job is nursing the production of the sperm. That means they protect the environment that the sperm production can take place. They support, so that's called blood testis barrier. They support the sperm production by cell division, which is mitosis and meiosis. Both are involved. They support the maturation of the sperm, which is called spermiogenesis. The testosterone produced by the Leydig cells come inside the seminiferous tubule, helps them. How they come inside the seminiferous tubule? By binding with this protein called androgen binding protein. Androgen is nothing but testosterone. And finally secretes another hormone called inhibin, which go to the brain and produce a feedback loop. Detail of these two not required. Detail not required. Just these two names are fine here. So these are the two sets of cells. This is I have a picture. This is a picture of the inside of the. This is the picture inside of the pipeline. So these are the Sertoli cells or sustentacular cells. Leydig cells will be outside that. Leydig cells will be outside the pipeline or between two pipelines. Epididymis, so obviously from the testis, it goes to the epididymis, the head of the epididymis, the tail of the epididymis right here, continue to become the vas deferens or ductus deferens. So that's the epididymis. We know that non-motile sperm, so they're just go right there. They're not very motile. They are mainly going through the fluid. And then once they become, like, remember, once they do the liquefaction, they become really motile. Ductus deferens or vas deferens that takes the that continues that pipeline. So is from the epididymis to the ejaculatory duct. Getting the ductus deferens, so they basically take off from the spermatic cord, make an incision, take out these vas deferens, and tie a knot, which is nearly 100% effective from the birth control. They always use the word nearly because even if you tie the knot, sometimes it does not work. Very few, but this is almost the best birth control exist. Urethra, I mentioned that earlier, that different three regions, prostatic, membranous, and penile or spongy urethra that going through and deliver the sperm and the urine both. That's a both function. The structured penis, which is a copulatory organ, meaning that's the organ which is responsible for putting the sperm into the female body. And this, there are two erectile tissue. There are two erectile tissue. Erectile tissue means they have a lot of space. So when a lot of blood comes, it causes erection. And that's why it's called erectile tissues. So there are two of them, corpus spongiosum and corpora cavernosa. But the corpus spongiosum is singular spongiosum, but corpora cavernosa is basically two separate cylinders. So pay attention to this one. This is the urethra. So it's going through the penis called penile urethra. Surrounding the urethra, so this is the urethra. Surrounding the urethra, there is one erectile tissue that is known as corpus spongiosum. So this is the urethra. Surrounding the urethra, that is known as corpus spongiosum. So this is the corpus spongiosum, the lighter blue color right there, surrounding the. Then there are two cylinders, one here and one here. Those two cylindrical structures, when you make a cross section, this is the cross section of the penis. This two is called corpora cavernosa. So corpora cavernosum is the singular. So both of them called corpora cavernosa. So these are the erectile tissue. So when, as I said, when lots of blood rush into that spaces between those tissues, which cause the erection. Then the front part of the penis is called glans penis. The front part is called glans penis that helps in delivering the sperm into the female reproductive tract. So that's contains all the information about the structure related material that you need to know. So finally, it comes spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis is the production of the sperm. So first, it contains the mitosis. This is very important. People often do mistakes. First, it contains the mitosis, then it has meiosis, and then it has a maturation process. The entire thing is called spermatogenesis. Mitosis, a little bit, meiosis involved, and then maturation process is involved, which is that maturation process is also called spermiogenesis. Together, everything is spermatogenesis, production of the sperm. The spermatogenesis takes place within the seminiferous tubule. The cell, that stem cell that is responsible for it, is called spermatogonium. Spermatogonium is the stem cells for sperm. Spermatogonia is the plural of that. So and it takes place from the wall to the lumen. So this is a pipeline. This is a seminiferous pipeline, let's say. So in the pipeline, the spermatogonia are sticking to the wall. Then slowly from the wall, they go mitosis, meiosis produce mature and the sperm, and then they swim up. So they basically go from the wall to the lumen, and then they keep swimming. Not motile, really. They like start just moving a little bit along with lots of fluid, and then later on they become motile. So initially, by the way, these two slides I'm going to explain from this picture. So initially, the spermatogonium undergo mitosis. So they keep dividing, producing identical daughter cells. So millions and millions and millions throughout the life of a male child. So right after puberty, the influence of hormone called FSH, the same hormone that is more established in female body, does the same job here. So these undergo mitosis all the time. That's what the most important part is. These undergo mitosis because people often forget about mitosis in responsible partly here. So the spermatogonium undergo mitosis all the time, keep producing two identical daughter cells. Although identical, some of them we call them spermatogonium A, some of them call them spermatogonium B. Depending on the reason which is come out from the wall. The one that come out from the wall, that's spermatogonium B, is responsible for production of the sperm. So if you go right there, spermatogonia A and spermatogonia B, they migrate slightly away from the wall. Remember, all the stem cells are on the wall, they move a little bit, they're on its way to producing sperm. So what they do, this spermatogonium B, when they are protected already by blood testis barrier, the Sertoli cells, they're protecting them, the nurse cells, and then they undergo a little bit changes, not cell division. So spermatogonium B undergo a little bit changes. We can use the word differentiate. So they differentiate into primary spermatocytes. So they become slightly enlarged. So they differentiate, not cell divide, no division, they differentiate into primary spermatocyte. This primary spermatocyte then undergo meiosis. So initially, the stem cell undergo mitosis, keep producing identical. But some of them, which just to go away from the wall, we call spermatogonium B, that B is responsible for making the little bit enlarged, making the primary spermatocyte. Once it becomes primary spermatocytes, it undergo meiosis. And I already explained to you meiosis 1, meiosis 2. So meiosis 1, prophase 1, metaphase 1, anaphase 1, telophase 1, cytokinesis, produce secondary spermatocytes. Then meiosis 2, prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2, telophase 2, cytokinesis, produce 4 haploid spermatid. By the way, although this picture is showing they're connected, they are actually not connected. So this is something wrong with this drawing. So there is no connection. These are 4 individual haploid cell, have the number of chromosomes they have. Because in meiosis, we have the haploid divisions. So haploid cells, we call them spermatid. They are not sperm. They are not sperm. They're called spermatid. So one more time, mitosis from spermatogonia, then spermatogonia B become primary spermatocytes. Primary spermatocytes undergo meiosis. First division, meiosis 1, produce secondary spermatocytes. Secondary spermatocytes undergo second division called meiosis 2, produce spermatid. All these spermatid undergo a maturation process. That maturation process is called spermiogenesis. So when they mature, they become sperm. So they become sperm. So they contain half the number of chromosomes. This process requires testosterone. So if a male does not have testosterone, in their semen will contain lots of spermatids. Not this, because this is a physical maturation process which requires testosterone. So what do you mean by physical maturation process? Basically, as I said earlier, the sperm needs to travel. So in order for successful travel, when you travel a lot, you travel light. Sperm is the same thing. They condense their nuclear material, which is DNA. They lose the excess baggage of cytoplasm. They make a flagella, which act like a tail, which help them later on in swimming. So same thing here described. This is the structure. This is the spermiogenesis process. So spermatid to sperm. So sperm has only 3 parts: head, midpiece, and the tail. Head, midpiece, and the tail. So you see that how that creating a flagella and a midpiece contain lots of microtubule and mitochondria, like a packet full of mitochondria, because they can produce tons of energy. They're losing the excess cytoplasm, so they become a slim structure. So they can move better. Excuse me. So they have 3 pieces, again, 3 parts: head, neck, or midpiece, which is packet full of mitochondria, helps them produce a lot of energy, and the flagella of the tail, which helps them to move. Now, if you pay attention right here on the head of the sperm, there is in this picture they put a red color. That's a sac, like a bag is attached right there. That becomes the sac of the bag attached, which is known as acrosome. So on the top of, so this is sperm head. On top of that, there's a bag attached. That bag is called acrosome. The name acrosome because they have multiple hydrolytic enzymes. One of the enzymes is called acrosine. So we are going to talk about the function of acrosome later on, like how they really help in fertilization. We're going to talk about that later on. Okay, so this is the structure of the sperm, and the process is called spermiogenesis. So when we say spermatogenesis, the production of the sperm, that contain all these processes. So from spermatogonia, production of mature sperm, the whole thing is spermatogenesis. So this is another good quality picture just to explain the structure of the anatomy of the sperm. So this is the head I'm talking about, the sac of the head. That's called acrosome, which contains a lot of hydrolytic enzymes. Those hydrolytic enzymes have a role in the fertilization process, which I'm going to describe after we learn the egg.